Rusty Martin here with Mr. Terry Dugan, longtime Tomcat fan, longtime Tomcat announcer, anyone that grew up playing football at Gloucester Memorial Field, aka the Sty, has heard this man's voice over the intercom. 22 years, Mr. Dugan, calling the Trimble football games there at Gloucester Memorial.
That's right, Rusty. We started, Lois as a spotter and myself as a public address announcer back when Greg Holbert was coaching the Tomcats. We saw a lot of good football played there, but I never had the opportunity to be public address announcer for a team that went 10-0. We came in right after the '89 team had gone 10-0, and we were gone the last 2 years with our son being the head coach at Oak Hill, so we didn't get to announce for this year's team either. So lots of 9-1s, no 10-0s.
Yes, sir, and the Mohawk Mafia now moved to 12-0, and they're going to play in the regional finals this week, taking on Shadyside in Zanesville. And that's the reason I came out today, is I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Trimble had a lot of down years, and then beginning in the 70s there with Coach Culver was really the foundation of the Trimble football tradition that we have today. And I know that you and Coach Culver and Coach Bolin were great friends, so I just wanted to ask you a little bit if you could take us back to that time when Coach Culver took over a downtrodden program and started laying that foundation that we see today.
Sure, Rusty. And by the way, I spent Friday night with Coach Culver watching the Athens playoff game. He was very impressed with the Bulldogs, and also talked to him again last night. Had I known you were going to do this tape, I would have asked him what he wanted me to say about him. But when Paul came to town in the early 70s, we were kind of on our heels. One thing, we were an independent team at that time, so we didn't have a league schedule to fall back on. And we had to go out and look for games. And as a result of that, we had a lot of long road trips. And also, when you're an independent and you're trying to pick up games, usually the only teams who want to schedule you are the teams who are pretty sure they can beat you. So we picked up some games against bigger schools and had some long road trips. But Paul picked up a few wins in his first year and a few more wins in his second year, and I think it might have been his third year that he put together a really strong team. I think they were either 8-1-1 or 8-2, something like that. And that's when I think that things really began to turn for Trimble. And I think if you could put your finger on one thing that Paul successfully did at Trimble, was he changed the attitude or the outlook of football. And the kids began to think that they really could win, because we had been through some years in the Muskingum Valley League, especially before we got out of there, when we were the smallest school in the league, and we took some beatings. But beginning in the 70s with Coach Culver, that attitude began to change. And when that happened, the kids began to see themselves as winners. And that's a big hurdle to get over with your program, is to begin to change that attitude.
Absolutely, and you see that attitude today in the Trimble players, and now it's just part of that tradition, going back to Coach Culver really starting to build that. And he had some great players back in those days too, that helped, including Coach Ferris, who helped Coach Culver in his mission to build the Tomcat program back up.
Without a doubt. I hesitate to mention names because you're asking me to talk about football games that were played 40 years ago. And I hate to leave anyone out, but definitely had some good football players. Always had some kids that were willing to step up and hit you. Not real big kids, but kids who were very aggressive, and always very skilled quarterbacks. I think if we've had a reputation for turning out one thing at Trimble, it's been good quarterbacks over the years. You can go down through the years and tick them off. Lots of all-state quarterbacks, kids who went on to play at the next level, just good athletes.
It's definitely been a strength for the Trimble Tomcats, including this year with Connor Stanley coming in, and he had a big game last night in that win over Steubenville Central Catholic, leading the Tomcats on the ground and through the air, and helping us get to this place in week 13 that I know Coach Ferris and the boys are holding so special in their heart. Right near the end of the Coach Culver era, Mr. Dugan, the Tomcats did enter a conference. They entered the TVC, and a lot of people said that the Tomcats couldn't enter that conference and do any good, but the Tomcats once again proved the doubters wrong.
That's right, Rusty. When we first petitioned to get into the Tri-Valley Conference, actually they voted us down. They didn't take us into the conference, and the two reasons that they gave at that time, number one, that we would not be competitive athletically, and number two, that we wouldn't draw a large enough crowd to make it profitable for them to play games against Trimble. I think we were actually voted down the first two times we petitioned to get into the league. The third time we got in, and I think the first year was 1978. We were in the Tri-Valley Conference, and we were part of a three-way championship. The next year, I think we were part of a two-way championship. And the next year, we won the whole thing. So the first 3 years that non-competitive Trimble joined the Tri-Valley Conference, I think we got at least a piece of the conference championship. So kind of put that idea to rest pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I remember those years well. Those were some of my formative years when I was in elementary grade school, and I just remember being so excited to get out and watch the Tomcats, and those guys were just true heroes to me. You know, there's a famous song that says, I was Roger Staubach in my backyard when you're a little kid out playing football, and I was Mike Roback in my backyard, and Bruce Fouts and those guys were just such big heroes to me when I was growing up, and I really think that sort of paved some of the foundation for me to be the football nut that I am today. I take it clear back to those early TVC and Trimble teams and all the success that they had under Coach Culver. And Coach Culver really, as we said, he really laid that foundation for Trimble to build a football tradition. And then your good friend and one of my heroes, Coach Ed Boland, comes in and takes over, and the magic that Culver had started just took off from there.
Coach Boland had a similar experience that Coach Culver did in the sense that his first team, or two, and I can't get my years straight, they were moderately successful. But Coach Boland did have that 1980 squad, and that was a phenomenal team. That's when this whole town began to catch fire for Trimble football. Back in those days, I think only the top two teams in each region qualified for the playoffs.
Yeah, we were talking about that last night because people were talking about Trimble had never been to a regional final, and while we were on air on the radio, Scott Holbert, former AP Offensive Lineman of the Year, Scott Holbert, sent me a text and said, you guys are wrong. We was in the regional final in 1980 against the Green Wave. So, yeah, they only took two teams, and if you made the playoffs back then, it was so difficult to make it, for one, but you were automatically in that regional final at that time.
That's where it all started, and our draw that year was Newark Catholic. At that time, Newark Catholic was king of the hill in small school football in the state of Ohio. They had a coach named J.D. Graham, who was legendary, and we gave them all they wanted. We lost 21-14. We had some penalties, made some mistakes. I think a lot of that was due to the nervousness of our first time being in the playoffs, and we were playing a seasoned playoff competitor with state championship experience. But again, that was a milestone in Trimble history. That was a very well-balanced team, both offensively and defensively. They could run, pass. They had the whole package, and in fact, they held several school records until they were broken this year.
For many years, yes. Yeah. And that final team there that made the regional final in 1980, you're right. I think that the magic and the tradition of Trimble football just took off from there, and this program owes so much to Coach Culver and Coach Boland. Coach Ferris played for Coach Culver. He coached under Coach Boland, and I know that those guys are heroes to him personally, and they helped shape some of the things that Coach Ferris would become. And Coach Ferris has been the leader of this Trimble program for 20 years now, and he's had a lot of success, and he's been a really great influence on our young men here at Trimble, and he just always seems to be able to draw on the positives and be a positive role model for our young men, and I appreciate that so much out of Coach Ferris and what he's done for our community. But Coach Culver and Coach Boland are two of your just best friends, and
friends, yes.
I would like, if you could, to just speak on both of those guys just a little bit on a personal aspect and what kind of men that they are and were.
I think both of them shared one quality that comes to my mind, and that was their dedication. They were extreme. As a matter of fact, Coach Culver is still coaching high school football after 42 years. Excuse me. But they're just totally committed to that, and not only to football, but to the players who play for them. And that's a testimony, because people who played for Coach Culver, well, for example, we were at the Athens playoff game Friday night, and Coach Culver and I were standing right inside the gate. And we couldn't hardly carry on a conversation, but for former players coming up to him and giving him a big hug and talking about this or that. And
including me.
Including you. And that's a real testament to the influence that they had on these people's lives. We asked him about one of his former players that when Coach Culver played for the state championship years ago, got beat by Youngstown Cardinal Mooney.
My senior year.
Your senior year, okay. And we asked him about the boy who was the quarterback that year. And this boy went on and had a very successful career at Toledo.
Kevin Mager.
Kevin Mager is a Division I quarterback. But when asked about Kevin Mager, Paul didn't talk about his Toledo football career. He talked about how successful he'd become, you know, as a businessman. He's in some kind of a business. I think he works for one of the automobile manufacturers in Detroit now. But that's where he went first, was to how successful he'd become in life. And I thought that's pretty neat. But people who stay in the business for a long time like that, they stay in there because they are a positive influence on people. You can only win so many football games, but you have to treat the kids right. You have to maintain discipline in your program, but you have to be fair and just about it at the same time. Coach Culver and Coach Bolin were both great motivators. They could get the most out of their players. Another thing that I liked about both of them is that the kids participated under their leadership. We usually had good numbers. You didn't see too many kids walking up and down the hallways of the school and say, boy, I wish this student would play football because he could really help the team. But they wanted to be part of the team. And they wanted the same thing for Coach Ferris today. Here we have over 50 kids participating at a Division VII school. And that's because they want to be part of the program. And that's a very, very positive reflection on the coaching staff, I think. It's a good place to be on the Trimble football team.
Yeah, and for guys like us, we're talking now about all the memories, and I don't think it can be overstated when you look at the head coaches who have led this program, from Coach Culver to Coach Bolin, Coach Holbert, Coach Ferris, and on down the line. You're talking about great men who really, as much as they love football, they take what you were talking about. That's first and foremost, and that's being a positive influence on the lives of young men and celebrating the successes that those young men have after football.
Yeah, that's definitely true. The idea of coming together and working together as a team for a common goal, you just can't say enough about that. It's so important, because that's one of the things that you take from football out into life with you. And you can teach a certain number of lessons in the classroom, but there are other lessons that you have to learn through experience. And I've always said that it's your football fields, baseball fields, and gymnasiums where some of those lessons are learned. How to work together, how to come from behind, how to keep working even when it doesn't look good. And to me, high school athletics does a good job of teaching that, and you have good coaches who emphasize it.
And you never know, these coaches, how far that influence reaches that we're talking about. Your own son, Nathan Warpig Dugan.
Yeah.
He's part of this small town Trimble football fraternity, and he went down the football road, and he's now the head coach at Oak Hill, and he's been to the football playoffs. He's been head coach for 2 years. He's been to the football playoffs for 2 years, league champions for 2 years.
Yeah.
And he's having some success down there. And I think probably, I know growing up, these guys that we're talking about, Coach Dugan played for Coach Ferris, with Coach Culver and Coach Bolin being such good friends of yours. So all three of these guys we're talking about just had a tremendous influence on the coach that Nathan Dugan would become.
Oh, well, without a doubt on that. We were always good friends with the Culvers and the Bolins until they left town. Of course, we still see them from time to time. But Nathan grew up around that. He grew up around being around those guys who were good high school coaches, but more than that, they were good people. And it just leaves a positive impression, and it leaves you kind of wanting a little more. When you want to be like that yourself. And I know Nathan has said that he's been influenced not only by Coach Culver and Bolin, and Ferris, obviously, but some of the other people who were assistant coaches at Trimble over the years. And Jeff Conroy is a good example. Jeff Conroy was an assistant on the undefeated 1980 team, went on to a very successful coaching career himself, and his son was just hired as an assistant coach. So Jeff's son works as an assistant coach under our son Nathan at Oak Hill. And you know there's some Jeff Conroy coming in to play down there in Oak Hill too. So it's just like a good fraternity, a good group of people, very positive group of people, and it's just fun to be around.
Well, Mr. Dugan, I wanted to come to see you because you are a guy, I know you've been there for many years watching those Trimble Tomcats take the field at the Sty, and
that's right.
You've been through a lot of these guys, as we said. Most of these coaches are great friends of yours, and you've been around the program, and you've seen this program progress, and now we're in unprecedented territory here as we head to Zanesville this week to take on the Slim Shadyside Tigers. And this Mohawk Mafia defense, this has just been a special group of kids for the Trimble Tomcats. And as we talked about the influence that the coaches have on the young men, those chapters haven't been written yet for these young men. But I will tell you this, that Coach Ferris and I have talked many times that as a group, as a whole group of kids, this is absolutely, and we're not talking about football here, off the field, this is the best group of kids that we've ever had at Trimble Local on the football squad. And so those chapters that are yet to be written, I'm sure they're going to be successful. So let's wish the Tomcats and the Mohawk Mafia good luck this week and bring home the regional final.
There you go. All right. Thanks, Dusty.